Привет, народ! Это мой экспериментальный уголок английского языка. Если вам английский никак не интересен, просто не смотрите это видео. Здесь я собираюсь читать прикольную книгу на английском. Если вы хотите потренировать свои навыки, воспринимать его на слух, то это прям для вас.
Hi everyone and welcome to my channel about everything international. Maybe you know that I try to improve my English all the time and sometimes trying to improve myself also. So that's why I decided to do the experimental part of my YouTube channel is reading. So I will read aloud, and if you want, you could also to read together with me one book. It's a very good book. It's a reliable source of information because it's written by Matthew McKay, PhD, Martha Davis, PhD, and Patrick Fanning. So I bought this book for around $50 and you could get it for free. So just listening with me. It's called Messages, the Communication Skills Book. Improve your relationship and personal effectiveness by mastering body language, couples communication, assertiveness, digital communication, negotiation, public speaking, self-disclosure, active listening, and influencing others. It's 1st of November today, and it's a very snowy day, and inside of my place is so warm and cozy, so it's perfect time for the good book, and let's enjoy reading. In this 4th edition of Messages, the authors present the essential of basic communication, from assertiveness and active listening skills to guidelines for digital communication and social media etiquette. Every individual, couple, and therapist will benefit from this book. If you wish to deepen your connections to others and to succeed in every social interaction, this book is for you. Michael A. Tompkins, PhD, author of Anxiety and Avoidance and the co-director of the San Francisco Bay Area Center for Cognitive Therapy. Messages will be warmly and fully welcomed into my clinical practice. This straightforward, easy to digest, and wholly useful book on effective communication is completely fit for its purpose. Reading, working through the exercises, and practicing the advised skill could only move those engaged in a process in one direction, toward improved relationships. The plethora of communication process descriptions, exercises, styles, needs, and outcomes provide the reader with a thorough and integrated understanding of what it means to engage in effective communication in the service of connection. An excellent self-help workbook about enhancing how we relate messages to others. Robin D. Walser, PhD, co-director of the Bay Area Trauma Recovery Clinic, assistant professor at the University of California, Berkeley, and co-author of Learning ACT, The Mindful Couple, and other books. This is an amazing book. The book will not only help you if you have been struggling to communicate effectively, but also if you just want to hone your skills. Using examples from all walks of life, the book explains the key aspects of effective communication and provides readers with ample opportunities to practice these skills in many different contexts. Although it is based on sound academic research, the book is by no means heavy academic reading, offering many practical examples and illustrations to bring the connect to life. The book is written in a non-technical, clear, concise, and personable style. I recommend this book without any reservations. George H. Eifert, PhD, co-author of the Mindfulness and Acceptance Workbook for Anxiety and Your Life on Purpose. Messages is a must-read for any person looking to improve their communication skills. Whether the reader needs to augment their relationship's effectiveness with significant others, co-workers, supervisors, or relatives, this book offers hands-on advice about how to effectively relate to others across different settings. All chapters have specific skills and exercises to master interpersonal skills beyond the classic techniques of using I statement. I highly recommend it. Patricia E. Zurita, ONA, PSYD, East Bay Behavior Therapy Santher, co-author of Mind and Emotions and author of Parenting a Troubled Teen and Escaping the Emotional Roller Coaster. Introduction. Communication is a basic life skill, as important as the skill by which you make your through school or earn a living. Your ability to communicate largely determines your happiness. When you communicate effectively, you make and keep friends, you're valued at work, your children respect and trust you, you get your sexual needs met. If you're less effective at communicating, you'll find your life deficient in one or more areas. Work may be alright, but your family shouts at dinner table. Sex can be found, but friendship never seems to work out. You bounce from job to job and your mate is often cool, but you have a great time with your old school buddies. You get a lot of laughs at parties but go home alone. Effective communication makes life work, but where can you learn it? Parents are often dismayed role models. Schools are so busy teaching math and reading. Often there is no one to show you how to communicate your wants, your anger, or your secret fears. No one shows you how to listen actively, how to ask for what you want without blaming others, or how to check out someone's meaning instead of mind reading. These skills have been known and available for years. They can and should be taught right along with 3Rs. Young adults, for example, should learn parent effectiveness skills in school before having children of their own, not years later when a teenage son is a truant or a daughter runs away. Colleagues should provide the core courses in the skills of communication in addition to the more traditional courses in communication theory. This book gathers the most essential communication skills into one volume. They are presented in a condensed form, but with sufficient examples and exercises so you can begin practicing the skills you want to acquire. The book tells you what to do about communicating rather than what to think about it. Pure theory is omitted unless it contributes directly to your understanding of a particular communication skill. Since its first edition in 1985, this book has become a standard work in its field, used by general readers, students, teachers, therapists, and counselors in a wide variety of settings. Looking over the table of contents of this revised fourth edition, you will see that the emphasis on skills is reflected in the book's organization. The first 3 chapters cover basic skills. Everybody needs to know how to listen, how to disclose your thoughts and feelings, and how to express what's really true. The section on advanced skills contains 5 chapters that teach you about using and understanding body language, decoding paralanguage, and meta messages, uncovering hidden agendas, applying transactional analysis to your communications, and clarifying your own and others' language. The next section on conflict skills covers skills that are essential in conflict situations: assertiveness, validation, and negotiating. The social skills section that follows contains 3 chapters on accurate first impressions, making contact with the new people, and communicating appropriately and effectively in the digital realm. The section on family skills teaches you how to communicate with your intimate partner, your children, and your extended family. The final section on public speaking offers 3 chapters about skill required for influencing others when you're called upon to make a speech and during interviews. Obviously, you should read the basic and advanced skill chapters first, then go on to the specific chapters appropriate to your relationships and position in life. Not so obviously, you have to do more than read. If you merely read, you will miss the main point of this book. The communication is a skill. The only way to learn a skill is experientially. You have to do it. You actually have to perform the exercises, follow the suggestions, and make these skills your own through practice. For some of the exercises in the book, you'll need a notebook or some blank pieces of paper. You can also download some of the exercises and other useful material at the website for this book. I'll also write it in the description below. Just as you wouldn't expect to become a skilled woodworker after leafing through a back issue of a woodworking magazine, so you can't expect to become a glib, fascinating conversationalist after just perusing the chapter on making contact. Learning by doing applies to communication skills just as much as to woodworking, skiing, or playing a musical instrument. Skill requires knowledge. The knowledge is in this book, but you must put it to work in your everyday life. Part 1. Basic skills. Listening. You're at a dinner party. Someone is telling anecdotes, someone is complaining, someone is bragging about his promotion. Everyone there is eager to talk, to tell his or her story. Suddenly, you get the feeling that no one is listening. While the talk goes on, you notice that people's eyes wander. They are perhaps rehearsing their own remarks. It's as if they have secretly agreed, I'll be an audience for you if you'll be an audience for me. Listening is an essential skill for making and keeping relationship. If you are a good listener, you notice that others are drawn to you. Friends can find you and your friendships deepen. Success comes a little easier because you hear and understand people. You know what they want and what hurts or irritates them. You get lucky breaks because people appreciate you and want you around. People who don't listen are bores. They don't seem interested in anyone but themselves. They turn off potential friends and lovers by giving the message, what you have to say doesn't matter much to me. As a result, they often feel lonely and isolated. The tragedy is that people who don't listen rarely figure out what's wrong. They change their hairstyle, they get new clothes, they work at being funny, and they talk about interesting things. But the underlying problem remains. They aren't fun to talk to because the other person never feels satisfied that he or she has been heard. It's dangerous not to listen. You miss important information and you don't see problems coming. When you try to understand why people do things, you have to mind reading and guess to fill in the gaps in your listening skill. Listening is a commitment and a compliment. It's a commitment to understanding how other people feel and how they see their world. It means putting aside your own prejudices and beliefs, your anxieties and self-interest, so that you can look at things from the other person's perspective. Listening is a compliment because it says to the other person, I care about what's happening to you. Your life and your experience are important. People usually respond to the compliment or listening by liking and appreciating you. Real versus pseudo-listening. Real listening is more than being quiet while someone else talks. It is based on your intention to understand someone, to enjoy someone, to learn something from them, or to give them help. Pseudo-listening masquerades as the real thing. The intention is not to listen but to meet some other need, such as making people think you're interested so they will like you, being alert to see if you're in danger of getting rejected, listening for one specific piece of information and ignoring everything else, buying time to prepare your next comment, half listening so someone will listen to you, listening to find someone's vulnerabilities or to take advantage of him or her, looking for the weak points in an argument, gathering ammunition for a counterattack so that you can always be right, checking the other's reaction to make sure you produce the desired effect, half listening to be nice and avoid hurting or offending someone. Now it's described the next exercise, and I'll also give the link. I will write it down in the descriptions below the video. So exercise 1.1. Everyone is a pseudo-listener at times. Use the following chart to assess the real versus the pseudo-listening you do with the significant people in your life. Estimate the percentage of your listening that is real for each of the following. Here is a table with the 4 parts. First one is work, boss, co-workers, subordinates. So you should write the percentage of how you listen. So if you are pseudo-listening for each of this part. Next goes home, maid, children, roommate. Then it's relatives, mother, father, siblings, others, and friends. Best friend, same-sex friend, opposite-sex friend. Okay, to use the information on your chart, ask yourself these questions. Who are the people you listen to best? Who are the people with whom you do more pseudo-listening? What is it about these people that makes it easier or harder to listen to them? Are there any people on the chart with whom you want to do more real listening? Choose one person you could relate to better. For one day, commit yourself to real listening. After each encounter, check your intention in listening. Were you trying to understand him or her, enjoy him or her, learn something, or give help or solace? Notice if you were doing any pseudo-listening and what needs your pseudo-listening satisfied. Habits form easily. If you continue this exercise for a week, attention to the quality of your listening will begin to be automatic. Blocks to listening. There are 12 blocks to listening. You will find that some are old favorites that you use over and over. Others are held in a reserve for certain types of people or situations. Everyone uses listening blocks, so you shouldn't worry if a lot of these blocks are familiar. This is an opportunity for you to become more aware of your blocks at the time you actually use them. Comparing. Comparing makes it harder to listen because you're always trying to assess who is smarter, more competent, more emotionally healthy, you or the other. Some people focus on who was suffered more, who's a bigger victim. They can't let much in because they are too busy seeing if they are measure up. While someone's talking, they have thoughts such as these. Could I do it that well? I've had it harder. He doesn't know what hard is. I earn more than that. My kids are so much brighter. Mind reading. The mind reader doesn't pay much attention to what people say. In fact, he or she often distracts it. The mind reader is trying to figure out what the other person is really thinking and feeling. She says she wants to go to the show, but I'll bet she's tired and wants to relax. She might be resentful if I pushed her when she doesn't want to go. If you're a mind reader, you make assumptions about how people react to you, based more on intuition, hunches, and the vague misgivings than on what people actually say to you. Rehearsing. You don't have time to listen when you are rehearsing what to say. Your whole attention is on the preparation and the crafting of your next comment. You have to look interested, but your mind is going a mile a minute because you've got a story to tell or a point to make. Some people rehearse whole chains of responses. I'll say X, then he'll say Y, then I'll say Z, and so on. Filtering. When you filter, you listen to some things and not to others. You pay only enough attention to see if somebody's angry or unhappy or if you're in emotional danger. Once assured that the communication contains none of these things, you let your mind wander. One woman listened just enough to her son to learn whether he was fighting again at school. Revealed to hear he wasn't, she began thinking about her shopping list. Another way people filter is simply to avoid hearing certain things, particularly anything threatening, negative, critical, or unpleasant. It's as if the words were never said. You simply have no memory of them. Judging. Negative labels have enormous power. If you prejudge someone as stupid or nuts or unqualified, you don't pay much attention to what the person says. You've already written the person off. Hastily judging a statement as immoral, hypocritical, fascist, or crazy means you've ceased to listen and have begun a knee-jerk reaction. A basic rule of listening is that judgments should only be made after you have heard and evaluated the content of the message. Dreaming. You are half listening and something the person says suddenly triggers a chain of private associations. Your neighbor says she's been laid off, and in a flash, you're back to the scene where you got fired for playing cards on those long coffee breaks. Hearts is a great time. There were those great cards parties years ago, and you lived on Sutter Street, and you're gone into dreams of the past, only to return a few minutes later as your neighbor says, "I knew you would understand, but don't tell my husband." Identifying. Here you take everything someone tells you and rather it back to your own experience. Someone wants to tell you about a toothache, but that reminds you of the time you had oral surgery for receding gums. You launch into your story before the other person can finish his or hers. Everything you hear reminds you of something that you've felt, done, or suffered. You're so busy with these exciting tales of your life that there is no time to really hear or get to know the other person. Advising. You are the great problem solver, ready with help and suggestions. You don't have to hear more than a few sentences before you begin searching for the right advice. However, while you are cooking up suggestions and convincing someone to just try it, you may miss what's most important. You didn't hear the feelings and you didn't acknowledge for person's pain. He or she still feels basically alone because you couldn't listen and just be there. Sparing. This listening block has you arguing and debating with people. The other person never feels heard because you're so quick to disagree. In fact, a lot of your focus is on finding things to disagree with. You take strong stance and are very clear about your beliefs and preferences. One subtype of sparing is the put down. You use acerbic and sarcastic remarks to dismiss the other person's point of view. For example, Helen starts telling Arthur about her problems in a biology class. Arthur says, "When are you going to have brains enough to drop that class?" The put down is standard block to listening in many marriages. Oh my god. It quickly pushes the communication into stereotyped patterns where each person repeats a familiar hostile litany. Another type of sparing is discounting. Discounting is for people who can't stand compliments. "Oh, I didn't do anything." "What do you mean? I was totally lame." "It's nice of you to say, but it's really a very poor attempt." The problem with the discounting is that others never feel satisfied that you really heard the appreciation, and they are right, you didn't. Being right. Being right means you will go to any lengths to avoid being wrong. You will twist the facts, start shouting, make excuses or accusations, or call up past sins. You can't listen to criticism, you can't be corrected, and you can't take suggestions to change. Your convictions are unshakable, and since you won't acknowledge that your mistakes are mistakes, you just keep making them. Derailing. This listening block is accomplished by suddenly changing the subject. You derail the trains of conversation when you get bored or uncomfortable with a topic. Or you might derail with a humor, responding to whatever is said with a joke or quip in order to avoid the discomfort of an anxiety of seriously listening to the other person. Placating. Right, absolutely. I know, of course you are. Incredibly. Yes, really? You want to be nice, pleasant, supportive. You want people to like you, so you agree with everything. You want to avoid the conflict. You half listen just enough to get the drift, but you are not really involved. You are placating rather than tuning in and examining what's being said. Assessing your listening blocks. Now that you've read about the listening blocks, you probably have an idea of which ones apply to you. Make a note of which listening block that seem typical of how you avoid listening. Having identified your blocks, you can begin to explore whom you are blocking out. You can also find out which people or types of people typically elicit certain blocks. For example, you may spar with your mother but derail your best friend, or you may placate and rehaints with your boss but do a lot of advising with your children. In the following exercises, you will explore the listening blocks you typically use, which blocks you tend to use with which people, and how often in which situation you resort to listen blocks. After you've assessed your listening patterns, the final exercise will help you make small changes that will enable you to become a better listener in the future. Again, to download the exercise 1.2, there is a link. It's going to be down below the video. Exercise 1.2. For significant people in your life, write down which listening blocks you typically use. Note that for many people you may use more than one block. And it's the same table as it was before. So let's continue. Look at your pattern of blocking. Are you blocking more at home or at work with the same sex or opposite sex friends? Do certain people or situations trigger blocking? Do you rely mostly on one kind of blocking, or do you use different blocks with different people and situations? Exercise 1.3. To help systematize your exploration of blocking, reserve a day to take the following 5 steps. Note that the goal of this exercise isn't to eliminate listening blocks, but to increase your awareness of how and when you engage in blocking. 1. Select your most commonly used block. 2. Keep a tally sheet. How many times did you use the block in one day? 3. With whom did you use the block most? 4. What subject or situation usually triggered the block? 5. When you started to block, how were you feeling? Circle everything that applies. Bored, anxious, irritated, hurt, jealous, frustrated, rushed down, criticized, excited, preoccupied, attacked, tired, other. This awareness exercise can be repeated with as many blocks as you care to explore. Keep track of only one block in any given day. Exercise 1.4. After gaining more awareness, you may want to change some of your blocking behavior. Reserve another 2 days to do the following. 1. Select the significant person you'd like to stop blocking. 2. Keep a tally sheet. How many times did you block the person on day 1? 3. What blocks did you use? 4. What subject or situation usually triggered the blocks? 5. On day 2, consciously avoid using your blocking gambits with the target person. Try paraphrasing instead. See the next section. Make a real commitment to listening. Notice and write down how you feel and what happens when you resist blocking. Note: don't expect miracles. If you have a 50% reduction in blocking, that's success. Initially, you may feel anxious, bored, or irritated. You may find yourself avoiding one blocking gambit only to use another. The conversation may take uncomfortable turns. You may suddenly share and reveal things you previously kept to yourself. Be a scientist. Objectively observe what happens. Evaluate it. Does this feel better than the usual way you operate with the target person? If it doesn't, extend the exercise for a week. Notice how you gradually form the habit of checking how well you are listening. 4 steps to effective listening. There are 4 steps to effective listening: listening actively, listening with empathy, listening with openness, and listening with awareness. 1. Active listening. Listening doesn't mean sitting still with your mouth shut. A corpse can do that. Listening is an active process that requires your participation. To fully understand the meaning of a communication, you usually have to ask questions and give feedback. Then, in give and take that follows, you gain a fuller appreciation of what's being said. You have gone beyond passively absorbing information and have become a collaborator in the communication process. Listening actively involves paraphrasing, clarifying, and giving feedback. Paraphrasing. To paraphrase means to state in your own words what you think someone just said. Paraphrasing is absolutely necessary to good listening. It keeps you busy trying to understand and know how the other person means, rather than blocking. You can paraphrase by using such lead-ins as the following. What I hear you saying is, in other words, so basically how you felt was, let me understand, what was going on for you was, what happened was, do you mean? You should paraphrase every time someone says something of any importance to you. When you paraphrase, people deeply appreciate feeling heard. Paraphrasing stops escalating anger and cools down crisis. It stops miscommunication by clearing up false assumptions, errors, and misinterpretations on the spot. Paraphrasing helps you remember what was said. And finally, paraphrasing is the antidote to most listening blocks. When you paraphrase, you'll find it much harder to compare, judge, rehearse, spar, advise, derail, dream, and so on. To get practice paraphrasing, do the following exercise. Choose a friend who likes to try new things. Explain that you want to improve your listening skills. The friend's job is to tell you a story of something important that happened in his or her life. Basically, all your friend has to do is talk. Your job as intervals is to paraphrase what's just been said. Say in your own way what you've heard so far and find out if you're getting it right. Every time you paraphrase, your friend gets to decide if you've really understood. The friend makes corrections in what you said, and you incorporate those corrections in a new attempt at paraphrasing. You keep at it, paraphrasing and correcting until your friend is satisfied that he or she has been heard. You may be surprised at how long it can take to clear up confusion and agree on what's been said. Misconceptions occur very easily. Clarifying. Clarifying often goes along with the paraphrasing. It means asking questions until you get more of the picture. Since your intention is to fully understand what's being said, you often have to ask more details, more background. You have to know the circumstances. Clarifying helps you sharpen your listening focus so that you hear more than vague generalities. You hear events in the context of what someone thought and felt, the relevant history. Clarifying also lets the other person know what you're interested. It gives the messages I'm willing to work at knowing and understanding you. Giving feedback. Active listening also depends on feedback. You've paraphrased and clarified what was said, and hopefully you understand it. This is the point at which you should share your reactions. In a non-judgmental way, you can say what you thought, felt, or sensed. This doesn't mean falling back into sparing or identifying as a reaction. It means sharing your perceptions and what happened inside you without approval or disapproval. Feedback also helps the other person understand the effect of his or her communication. It's another chance to correct errors and misconceptions. It's also a chance for him or her to get a fresh and valuable point of view. To check perceptions of the other person's feelings, you transform what you saw and heard into a tentative description. I want to understand your feelings. Do you feel more regret or guilt about what happened? Listening to what you said, I wonder if maybe you are still angry at him. Good feedback is immediate, honest, and supportive. Immediate means giving feedback as soon as you have paraphrased and clarified what you heard and fully understand it. Putting off your feedback, even for a few hours, makes it much less valuable. Honest means giving you real, true reaction without being brutal about it. You don't have to tear into somebody to give your reaction. In fact, brutally is rarely honest. Supportive means that even negative feedback should be gentle, saying what you need to say without causing damage or defensiveness. For example, I get the feeling that there is something you are not telling me, is more supportive than you're holding out on me. I think there is a real possibility that you've made a mistake, is more supportive than you've been a fool. 2. Listening with empathy. To listen with empathy, remember that everyone is trying to survive, physically and psychologically, as best they can. You don't have to like everyone or agree with everyone, but recognize that you do share some struggles. Even the most outrageous, inconsiderate, false, and violent acts are strategies to minimize pain, postpone death, and hold on to life. Some people have better survival strategies than others, and some are plainly incompetent, making a mess of everything they touch. They don't live as long physically, and they die an early psychological death from chronic depression or anxiety. But everyone is doing their best, moment to moment, to survive. Say to yourself, this is hard to hear, but it's another human being trying to live. Ask yourself, how might this belief or this decision, thought it may ultimately fail, lower this person's anxiety or get some needs met? Listening with empathy is especially hard when someone is angry, critical, or self-pitying. When that happens, ask these questions. What need is the anger, anxiety, etc. coming from? What danger is this person experiencing? What is he or she asking for? 3. Listening with openness. It's difficult to listen when your mind is closed, when you are judging and finding fault. All the information gets scrambled coming in while you build a case to dismiss a person or refute his or her ideas. You listen selectively, filtering out everything that makes sense and pouncing on whatever seems false or silly. You collect and hoard the stupidities so you can share them later with a sympathetic audience. Judgments can be very gratifying, but they cost you a lot. If your opinions are proven false, you're the last to know. You don't grow intellectually because you only listen to viewpoints you already hold. You dismiss otherwise worthwhile people because you disagree with their ideas. Others lose interest in you. Basically, you agree and don't listen. Finally, you miss important information. Nearly everyone has trouble listening openly. You don't want to hear your sacred cows reduced the hamburger. You don't want to face certain facts about yourself. Nor do you want to believe that an unlikable person has said something worth thinking about. You naturally want to argue, to shout it down. You are afraid of being wrong because your opinions and beliefs are closely tied to your self-esteem. Being wrong can equal being stupid, bad, or worthless. Listening with openness is a skill you can learn. The following exercise, called a reversal, should be tried with someone you trust. Select an old disagreement that isn't too explosive. Each of you states your side of the argument. Now reverse sides and argue for the opposite position. Do it convincingly, really pushing the other person's point of view. Try to win the debate from the other side. Don't stop until you feel immersed in the viewpoint you once opposed. At the end, share with each other what you experienced. Obviously, you can't practice reversal most of the time. What you can do as an exercise in openness is think of yourself as an anthropologist. Imagine that the person you are talking to hails from another country with different customs and ways of thinking, and your job is to find out how the other person's point of view makes sense, to see how it fits with his or her world life, history, and a particular social system. Reverse judgment and strive to hear the whole statement, the entire communication. Refrain from evaluations until you have all the information. 4. Listening with awareness. There are two components to listening with awareness. One is to compare what's being said to your own knowledge of history, people, and the way things are. You do this without judgment, simply making note of how a communication fits with the known facts. The second way you listen with awareness is to hear and observe congruence. Does the person's tone of voice, emphasis, social expressions, and posture fit with the content of the communication? If someone is telling you that his father has just died, but smiles and leans back comfortably with his hands laced behind his head, the message doesn't make sense. There is no congruence. If body, face, voice, and words don't fit, your job as a listener is to clarify and give feedback about the discrepancy. If you ignore it, you will setting for an incomplete or confusing message. Total listening. People want you to listen, so they look for clues to prove that you're listening. Here's how to be a total listener. Maintain good eye contact. Lean slightly forward. Reinforce the speaker by nodding or paraphrasing. Clarify by asking questions. Effectively move away from distractions. Be committed to understanding what was said even if you're angry or upset.